Did you know that Marie Curie was the first person in history to win 2 Nobel Prizes in different disciplines? How did she achieve this? What led a young Polish woman to travel alone to Paris to study at a time when women faced significant barriers to accessing higher education? What revolutionary discoveries did Marie and Pierre Curie make that earned them the Nobel Prize? And how did their work change modern science? How has Marie Curie's legacy influenced science and the fight for women's equality in the academic and scientific world? In this video, we'll take you on a fascinating journey through the extraordinary life of Marie Curie, a pioneering woman who broke barriers and redefined modern science. We will discover the challenges she faced, from her difficult childhood in Poland to her revolutionary discoveries that earned her 2 Nobel Prizes. Join us as we answer these questions and explore the indelible legacy of one of history's greatest minds. Before we get started, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications to stay updated with our latest content. Family biography, childhood and youth. Maria Skłodowska was born on November 7, 1867 in Warsaw, a city that at that time was part of the Russian Empire. The Poland in which Maria grew up was under constant political and cultural oppression. Russian government policies imposed severe restrictions on Polish education and culture, making the environment in which Maria grew up even more difficult and challenging. However, in her family, knowledge and effort were unshakable values. Her parents, Bronisława and Władysław Skłodowski, both teachers, instilled in their children a passion for learning and a sense of achievement that would mark Maria's life forever. Władysław was a professor of mathematics and physics, and although his career was marked by ups and downs due to the political difficulties of the time, he never lost his passion for teaching. Bronisława, for her part, ran a school for girls, and although her health was delicate, she was a fervent advocate of education, particularly education for women. In a society where educational opportunities for girls were limited, Bronisława strove to break down barriers, an effort that clearly influenced Maria's view on the importance of equality in education. Maria was the youngest of 5 children, and from a young age she showed extraordinary intelligence. However, her childhood was deeply marked by tragedy. Her older sister Zofia died of typhus when Maria was only 10 years old, and shortly after, her mother died of tuberculosis. These early losses affected young Maria deeply, but rather than giving in to her sadness, she channeled her grief into a fierce determination to excel in her studies and honor her family's educational legacy. Despite the financial difficulties that followed her mother's death, Maria excelled in school. Her aptitude for science and mathematics was remarkable, and her thirst for knowledge seemed insatiable. Still, she faced a major obstacle. Under Russian occupation, women in Poland were unable to access formal higher education. But for a young woman as determined as Maria, this would be nothing more than a challenge to overcome. The Flying University, the beginning of an intellectual revolution. In Warsaw, an underground organization known as the Flying University was founded, which allowed Polish women to study secretly, evading restrictions imposed by the Russian authorities. This system of occult education was crucial to the intellectual development of many Polish women, including Maria. Through this university, Maria had access to a level of education that would otherwise have been impossible for her to achieve. She studied fervently, and her academic abilities soon made her one of the most outstanding students. But Maria was not satisfied with what she had achieved so far. She knew that in order to fully develop her potential, she needed to seek higher education in a place where women had more opportunities. Thus, a new dream emerged in her life: Paris. The journey to Paris, higher education and independence. The year was 1891. Maria Skłodowska, a young Polish woman with a brilliant mind and an iron will, made a decision that would mark the beginning of a new stage in her life and in the history of science. She decided to leave her home in Warsaw and move to Paris, a city that, although it promised her opportunities, would also present her with enormous challenges. There, she adopted the name Marie, a change that symbolized her personal and professional transformation. Marie arrived in Paris full of dreams but also of uncertainties. She didn't know many people, and the French language and culture were foreign to her at first. However, what marked her most was the economic situation she had to face. She lived in poverty, in a small attic in the Latin Quarter, with hardly any resources. Her days were divided between long hours of study and odd jobs that allowed her to survive. In winter, her small room lacked heating, and Marie was often forced to study wrapped in blankets to combat the cold. She barely ate enough, with her diet limited to bread, tea, and some cheap fruit. But this precariousness did not stop her. On the contrary, it drove it. She knew that every sacrifice she made, every night without sleep or every day without a decent meal, was an investment in her future. She had a clear goal: to study physics and mathematics at one of the most prestigious universities in the world, the Sorbonne. When Marie began her studies at the Sorbonne, she quickly realized that the academic environment was not the most welcoming for a woman. In an era when women were few in the classroom, she faced an atmosphere of disdain and condescending attitudes. Many of her male classmates doubted her abilities simply because of her gender, and teachers did not always treat her as seriously as she deserved. Far from being intimidated, however, Marie used that adversity as a source of motivation. While many students gave up at the first difficulty, she persisted. She spent endless hours in the library, devouring physics and mathematics books, always seeking to understand every detail. It wasn't just a question of passing her exams, but of excelling in them, of proving that she not only deserved to be there, but that she could outperform many of her peers. And she did. In 1893, Marie graduated with a bachelor's degree in physics, ranking first in her class. It was a monumental achievement, but for her it wasn't enough. Her hunger for knowledge led her to obtain, just 1 year later, a second degree in mathematics. This placed her as one of the best young minds in Europe, and her name began to resonate in academic circles. Marie's story at the Sorbonne is not only a tale of academic success, but also of personal resilience. She often found herself alone, without the support of her family who remained in Poland. She missed home, but she knew that returning would mean giving up her dreams. Paris represented freedom, the opportunity to be more than just a young provincial woman. In France, she could become the scientist she had always dreamed of being. One of the most notable aspects of her time in Paris was her ability to confront and overcome barriers not only economic, but also social and gender. At that time, science was a male-dominated field, and women who managed to enter those circles did so under constant scrutiny. Marie, however, was not simply looking to be accepted. She wanted to be recognized for her talent and her efforts, not for any gender concessions. It was during this period that her dedication began to attract the attention of the academic community. Teachers and colleagues realized that they were not dealing with just any student. Her precision, her ability to formulate hypotheses and solve complex problems made her stand out from the rest. But Marie remained modest. It never sought recognition for recognition's sake. For her, science was not a means to fame, but an end in itself. It was her passion, her calling, and nothing else mattered. As her studies progressed, Marie began to specialize in the field of radioactivity, a phenomenon recently discovered by Henri Becquerel. This topic, though fascinating, was still in its infancy and offered vast unexplored territory to a curious and meticulous mind like Marie's. She immersed herself in her research with the same intensity with which she'd approached everything in her life up to that point, with absolute dedication and without rest. However, despite her academic achievements, Marie still faced structural barriers. Although she was one of the best students of her generation, employment opportunities for women in science were extremely limited. Scientific research, especially in physics, was almost exclusively reserved for men. Despite this, Marie was not discouraged. She knew she had to keep going, continue to prove her worth in a world that wasn't always ready to recognize her. The Life of Love, Meeting Pierre Curie. It was in this context, in 1894, that her life took an unexpected turn when she met a man who would not only share her dreams, but also love her deeply: Pierre Curie. Pierre Curie already had a reputation in the world of physics when he met Marie. He was a man of few words, with a quiet and reserved character, but his mind shone with a unique intensity. He was completely immersed in his research on magnetism and piezoelectricity, which had earned him the respect of the scientific community. However, Pierre was not someone who sought the limelight or recognition. His interest in science was genuine and selfless, motivated by curiosity and the pursuit of knowledge. The story of how they met is almost like a movie. Marie, in her search for a space to continue her experiments, was introduced to Pierre by a mutual friend. At first, she saw him as just another colleague, someone who could help her with her work in Paris. But as they began to talk, something special emerged between them. Pierre was impressed by Marie's intelligence and tenacity. Not only was she a brilliant woman in a male-dominated field, but she also shared the same overwhelming passion for science as he did. Marie, for her part, was surprised by Pierre's humility. Unlike other scientists she had interacted with, he did not look down on her. On the contrary, he treated her as an equal, as an intellectual companion. For both, the connection was immediate, but what began as a professional relationship soon became something much deeper. Pierre saw in Marie someone who could not only share his ideas, but a woman who understood him on a level that others could not. Together, they not only shared long hours of experimentation, but also conversations about philosophy, nature, and the meaning of life. Pierre, who until then had led a solitary and almost monastic life, found in Marie a source of inspiration. In letters to friends, he described Marie as a unique person whose strong character and dedication to science amazed him every day. But beyond his admiration for her intellectual capacity, Pierre fell in love with the woman behind the scientist. "She is the most extraordinary woman I have ever met," he said. And Marie, who had always maintained a certain emotional distance in her personal life, discovered in Pierre a partner with whom she could dream, both inside and outside the laboratory. In 1895, just a year after they met, Pierre and Marie were married. But their wedding was as unconventional as their relationship. Without luxuries or grand ceremonies, both opted for a simple wedding, dressed in an austere manner, with deep mutual respect, and with science as a witness to their union. Instead of expensive rings, Pierre gave Marie a bicycle, an object that they would both use to escape on long trips through the countryside, enjoying nature and moments of tranquility away from their laboratories. These walks provided a respite from their busy scientific lives, but they also strengthened the bond that united them. The Curie couple was, above all, a partnership of soulmates. They both shared an absolute devotion to science and a deep admiration for each other. The relationship between Marie and Pierre was far from the stereotypes of the time. There was no hierarchy between them, but a mutual respect and equality that was rarely seen in contemporary marriages, especially in academic circles. They worked side by side as equals, exploring together the mysteries of radioactivity, a field in which only the first steps had been taken. And it was that equality, that unconditional support for each other, that allowed them to make discoveries that would forever change the course of science. When Marie and Pierre began investigating the mysterious rays emitted by certain elements, they knew they were on the threshold of something revolutionary. It was uncharted territory, but together they faced the challenges with enthusiasm. They spent long hours in a makeshift laboratory with hardly any resources or sophisticated equipment, but the shared passion kept them motivated. Their workdays were endless, but for them, science was not a job, it was a passion, and having each other as experimentation and life partners made it all worthwhile. While Pierre focused on his own research into magnetism, he never ceased to support Marie's work. He became so involved in his wife's research that it eventually ceased to be Marie's research and became their research. Together, they carried out fundamental experiments that led to the discovery of two new elements, polonium and radium. Although radioactivity was a phenomenon still misunderstood by the scientific community, the Curies knew they were reaching the limits of what was known, opening a new era for science. The relationship between Marie and Pierre was not only warm and respectful on a personal level, but was crucial to their scientific achievements. Every discovery, every advance, was the fruit of their collaboration, of their long discussions in the laboratory, and of their ability to inspire each other. When Pierre was tragically killed in a car accident in 1906, Marie was devastated. She had lost not only her husband, but her partner in life and science. Pierre's death was a devastating blow to Marie, but instead of giving up, she found in his memory the strength to continue her work. In honor of her husband, she continued the research they had begun together, taking his legacy even further. Scientific discoveries, polonium and radium. Picture this, it's the late 19th century. The world of science is full of unsolved mysteries, and among them, one of the most intriguing is radioactivity, a phenomenon that seems to defy all the rules known so far. Inspired by the work of Henri Becquerel, who discovered that uranium salts emitted a form of invisible radiation, Marie decides that there is something here that needs to be investigated further. And this is where her doctoral research begins, in the invisible and fascinating world of radioactive materials. For long days and nights, the Curies work in extremely rudimentary conditions. They don't have a sophisticated laboratory. Instead, they work in an old, poorly ventilated hut without proper equipment and constantly exposed to the hazardous materials they are handling. But neither the discomforts nor the physical risk stop Marie. She has a clear vision, a firm idea that they are on the verge of a monumental discovery. In 1898, her perseverance bore fruit. After months of studying pitchblende, a mineral that seemed to emit more radiation than it should given the amount of uranium it contained, Marie and Pierre discover something extraordinary. They found that pitchblende contains two new elements that were previously unknown. The first is called polonium, in an emotional tribute to Marie's homeland, Poland, which at the time was still under occupation by various foreign powers. The second element, even more fascinating, is called radium, because of the intense radiation it emits. Radium becomes one of the most impressive substances that humanity had seen up to that time. Its radioactivity is hundreds of times stronger than that of uranium, and its properties are beginning to open doors to entirely new areas of scientific research. What Marie and Pierre had achieved was not only the discovery of new elements, but they had opened a door to a completely new era for physics and chemistry. The Curie's work does not only have theoretical implications. The radioactivity of radium is beginning to find applications in medicine, where it is used to treat cancer through radiotherapy. The destructive properties of radiation emitted by radium can attack cancerous tumors, and soon the world realizes that this element could be key in the fight against one of humanity's most devastating diseases. This breakthrough marks the beginning of radiation oncology, a field that would save millions of lives in the future. However, the discovery of radium and polonium was not just a scientific triumph. It was also a personal feat for Marie. Although Pierre was her collaborator in this research, the approach, methodology, and passion for discovering these new elements were born in Marie's mind. At a time when women barely had a place in the scientific community, she had broken all barriers. With her brilliant mind and fierce determination, Marie proved that there were no limits to what a woman could achieve in the world of science. Despite their success, the Curies faced serious challenges. The scientific community was often skeptical of Marie's abilities. Although she and Pierre published the results of their discoveries together, Marie was often underestimated. After Pierre's tragic death in 1906, Marie decided to continue her research alone. She took up the chair of physics at the Sorbonne University, becoming the first woman to do so. The impact of Marie Curie's discoveries is difficult to overstate. It opened a new era in science, laying the foundations for the study of nuclear physics and radioactive chemistry, with applications that would extend throughout the 20th century and beyond. Her work enabled the development of nuclear energy, and although radioactivity has also brought negative consequences, such as the creation of nuclear weapons, Marie's scientific legacy has saved countless lives through its application in medicine. But we must not forget that these achievements came at a personal price. Constant exposure to radioactive materials without adequate protection gradually deteriorated Marie's health. She did not know at the time the destructive effects that radiation could have on the human body, and worked with radium and polonium for years without any protection. Eventually, this would lead her to develop a disease that weakened her and ultimately caused her death in 1934. Recognitions: 2 Nobel Prizes. In 1903, one of the most extraordinary milestones in Marie Curie's life occurred. She was awarded her first Nobel Prize in physics. This recognition was shared with her husband Pierre Curie and with Henri Becquerel for their contributions to the study of radioactivity. Radioactivity was a relatively new phenomenon, discovered by Becquerel a few years earlier, and it was Marie who delved deeper into its study, unraveling its mysteries. This Nobel Prize was not only a triumph for the scientific community, it was a historic milestone for women around the world. Marie became the first woman to win a Nobel Prize. Think about what that meant in the early 20th century, at a time when women were excluded from academia, when even studying at universities was a huge challenge. Marie Curie not only sat at the table, she claimed her place among the giants of science. She was living proof that talent and dedication are gender neutral, a symbol for women who wanted to enter scientific fields dominated by men. However, this recognition did not come easily. Marie had to face prejudice, criticism, and a constant struggle to be seen as a fully fledged scientist. The fight for recognition. We cannot talk about Marie's first Nobel Prize without mentioning the obstacles she encountered along the way. The Nobel Committee had initially considered awarding the prize only to Pierre and Becquerel. completely ignoring Marie's vital contribution to the discovery and study of radioactivity. Pierre, true to his upright character and his deep respect for his wife's work, refused to accept such injustice. He demanded that Marie's name be included, and only then did the committee officially recognize the importance of her work. This incident was one of many examples of the gender bias that prevailed in the academic world at the time, and although Marie received the recognition she deserved, the battle for respect and equality was not over. The tragic death of Pierre Curie. Just 3 years after receiving this prestigious award, Marie faced the greatest personal tragedy of her life, the sudden death of Pierre. In 1906, Pierre was run over by a carriage on the streets of Paris and died from his injuries. This event marked a before and after in Marie's life. She lost not only her husband, but also her greatest scientific collaborator and her partner in life. The pain was devastating, but instead of stopping, Marie decided to continue her work. This dark moment revealed another facet of Marie Curie, her resilience. After Pierre's death, many people would have abandoned their research or retired to a quieter life. But Marie was not just anyone. She decided to continue with her work, bearing not only the emotional weight of the loss, but also the growing responsibilities at the laboratory. Following Pierre's death, Marie was appointed professor at the Sorbonne University, becoming the first woman to teach at that prestigious institution. Once again, she broke gender barriers, becoming a key figure in the scientific field, despite personal difficulties. The second Nobel Prize. Marie Curie's life could have stopped after her first great loss, but instead she delved even deeper into her research. Science saved her from despair. In 1911, Marie Curie won her second Nobel Prize, this time in chemistry, for her discoveries of radium and polonium, and her tireless work in researching the properties of radioactive elements. This award was especially significant because Marie became the first person in history to win 2 Nobel Prizes, and in 2 different disciplines. This second award solidified her place in history, not only as the great scientist who discovered new elements and revolutionized medicine and physics, but also as an icon of human perseverance and ingenuity. However, this new achievement was not without controversy. The controversy of personal life. In the months leading up to receiving her second Nobel Prize, Marie Curie's personal life was embroiled in a media scandal that nearly overshadowed her extraordinary scientific work. Shortly after Pierre's death, Marie began a relationship with Paul Langevin, a fellow physicist who was, at the time, separated from his wife. However, when the press found out about this relationship, a scandal broke out that shook French society. The newspapers did not hesitate to attack Marie, calling her a homewrecker and questioning her morality. She was a foreign woman, a Pole in France, a widow and mother who dared to have a love life. These attacks were ruthless and reflected the gender bias of the time. Demonstrations were staged outside her home, and sensationalist articles were published seeking to discredit her. The scandal was so intense that some members of the Nobel Committee suggested that he should not attend the award ceremony. Marie, however, was not intimidated. Her answer was clear: "My Nobel Prize has nothing to do with my private life." And with that powerful statement, she traveled to Stockholm to receive her second Nobel Prize with the same dignity with which she had accepted the first. This was a lesson not only in character and firmness, but also in how science should be above social prejudices. Daughters and family. Marie and Pierre Curie had 2 daughters, Irène and Ève. Irène Joliot-Curie followed in her parents' footsteps, becoming a renowned physicist and also winning a Nobel Prize in chemistry together with her husband Frédéric Joliot-Curie for their work on artificial radioactivity. On the other hand, Ève Curie stood out as a writer and journalist, and wrote a biography about her mother entitled Madame Curie, which helped preserve Marie's legacy. The legacy: science, health, and feminism. During World War I, Marie Curie played a crucial role in developing and organizing the use of mobile X-ray units to treat wounded soldiers. These units, which were vehicles equipped with radiology equipment, were colloquially known as Petite Curies or Little Curies. With her knowledge of radioactivity and her belief that science should serve humanity, Marie Curie installed more than 20 of these trucks, which allowed X-rays to be taken on the battlefield, locating fractures and projectiles in the bodies of soldiers to facilitate surgery. Marie was not alone in this effort. She was assisted by her eldest daughter, Irène Curie, who was only 17 years old at the time. Mother and daughter worked tirelessly, not only managing the radiology equipment, but also training other doctors and technicians to use the machines. This work by Marie and her daughter not only saved countless lives, but also paved the way for the widespread use of radiology in war medicine. Marie Curie died in 1934 due to aplastic anemia, probably caused by prolonged exposure to radiation. Her scientific legacy is monumental. Not only did she make fundamental discoveries that transformed physics and chemistry, but she also paved the way for the use of radioactivity in the treatment of diseases, especially cancer. In addition to her impact on science, Marie Curie is an iconic figure in the fight for women's rights. She was one of the first to demonstrate that women could achieve great scientific achievements in an era dominated by men. Her life and career remain a symbol of gender equality and scientific dedication. Marie Curie also founded the Curie Institute in Paris, a research institution that remains a leading center for research into cancer and other diseases. This institute is part of her lasting legacy, as are the many fellowships and awards that bear her name and continue to support young female scientists around the world. We hope you enjoyed this video. If you want us to cover a specific topic, please write it in the comments. Give this video a like and share it so your family and friends can also learn about the remarkable life of Marie Curie. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe, and don't miss our recommended video at the end. You will enjoy it. Never forget, history is the imitator of time, the repository of actions, the witness of the past, the example and warning of the present, the caution for the future.